listening to Sandy and Nora's podcast.
Hey, Nora.
Hey, Sandy.
It's Monday. How are you doing? The beginning of your week?
It's good. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday, Sandy.
No, I know it's Tuesday for the people who are listening, but I just want the people who are listening to know that we are recording on Monday instead of Sunday.
What?
Why do I want them to know that? I don't know. I wanted to let them in on what was happening behind the scenes. Why are you ruining it?
I just don't want anyone to sue us for thinking that today's Monday because it's Tuesday.
Sue us? Don't make me give you a lawyer response, Nora. My question still stands. How are you?
Well, I am so well. It is March break, and I managed to finagle my family to leave so that I can work all week. And so I'm amazing. I couldn't be better. How are you?
I'm great. I had a good weekend. I've been working on another book and the first book, and all the books are coming together, just crashing. And it's kind of overwhelming, but also really great. But you know what else happened last week, Nora?
What's that?
We kind of opened, for a bit of a soft launch, the Wild Seed Center for Arts and Activism for its first show. Yeah. So these artivist fellows that we have been supporting for over a year with faculty in their art and helping them develop their practice, had their first show open at the Wild Seed Center last week. It is a bit of a soft launch because there's still a few more reno stuff that needs to be done, but people can now come in and use the center. It is available, and it was really, really, really exciting and super beautiful. And I wasn't there because I'm in Los Angeles, but I, with deep envy, saw all the photos and the video and helped to prep for it. And I'm just so excited and proud of everyone who put it together.
Oh my God, that is exciting for a whole bunch of different reasons. I have been able to see the center when it was under construction a couple of months ago, and you folks have created something that is so stunning and special and beautiful, and I cannot wait to see the art that is facilitated by this space.
Yeah, me too. I feel so great about it. And there's space for people to just chill and work, and a great library and space for kids. So come through, check it out. So Nora, obviously I'm feeling super gracious because of that, the whole experience, everything about it. And I'm sure we have some more gratitude to share, don't we?
We have probably some gratitude to give out, but first let's give out some scorn. So the person that signed our email address up to, I don't even know what this is, hundreds of lists. Actually, they may have been the same person that signed me personally up to hundreds of lists, because I also woke up to an unbelievable amount of signups in my email address a couple of days ago, same day that this happened. It's making it impossible for us to read who's donated. So we're going to have to put that off to next week when I can figure out how to, unsubscribe from hundreds of lists. And if you're trying to get in touch with us, oh boy, what the fuck, man? Why the fuck do people do this?
I don't know, but it's always really helpful to have an email that you don't care about for the white supremacists in the world who will sign you up for shit. Unfortunately, we don't have that for Sandy and Nora. But don't let that be a sign of us not having all of the gratitude for those of you who donate in this week. We are going to figure it out, and we'll thank you next week. But thank you anyway. We really appreciate you.
Totally. Okay, Sandy, it's been another week of news.
It's just news dump. Man, so much news.
Yep.
Where do we start? How do we do this? I don't even know.
Let's start with the death of Brian Mulroney.
If you want.
It seems like the fastest thing to talk about.
Okay, Brian Mulroney died. And as a result, we have gotten collective amnesia about what happened when the guy was prime minister and only have good things to say.
That's right. That is right. I mean, I'm not surprised that there's collective amnesia, but what is really fascinating is that no one in this country apparently has the capacity to be honest about this kind of thing. And, Brian Mulroney was a really controversial prime minister. He came in at a moment where Canada was on the cusp of change, where Ronald Reagan had already started what was frankly revolutionary changes within the business sector, business world to undo or remove a lot of the regulations that helped to make sure that they weren't just going to, run roughshod over so many people as they end up doing. And Mulroney comes in 1984, taking over from a prime minister of ages past, from Pierre Trudeau. Trudeau had almost no support in Western Canada, almost no support at all in Western Canada. And reconciliation at that time was the term that was thrown around a lot to create a united Canada, reconcile the provinces. And, because I'm writing, or I've just written a book on this and it's coming out in the fall, I spent a lot of time reading Mulroney's throne speeches. And he was really concerned.
You spent a lot of time with him recently. That's interesting.
Oh, I was like, oh my God, Brian Mulroney did. I just spent so much time listening and watching and reading stuff that he wrote and said and that other people wrote about him. And, he brought in revolutionary change to the Canadian government. And that revolutionary change was following in the footsteps of other neoliberal revolutionaries like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. His relationship with Ronald Reagan was very, very celebrated and famous. These two Irish descendants now leading the two of the three governments in North America. And he lays the stage for everything that comes after that someone who is moderately progressive would say was a disaster. He privatized 23 crown corporations. This is the biggest thing. He defunded our system of unemployment insurance, right? Unemployment insurance used to be funded by government, people, and corporations, and Mulroney privatized it, took all of the government funding out of it so that it was only funded by us and our employers. And that was an outlier in the world. The only other country that had that was the United States. Nowhere else in a welfare state country did that kind of fundamental change get made to unemployment insurance. And from 1984, where he wins with this stunning historical election result, until his stunning and historical election defeat in the early 90s and hands it over to Jean Chrétien, the transformation of Canada into a place where businesses rule, in a way, businesses have always ruled in Canada, but the way that they ruled now was like even more stunning. That is Mulroney's legacy.
Yeah, I say to that, absolutely, no doubt. I wrote briefly about him in my defund book as well because of his approach to, he was, like you say, much like his compatriots in Thatcher and Reagan, really responsible for some major neoliberal shifts. And that includes the way that policing operates, just as much as it includes the way that business operates. And of course, how can we forget that he was prime minister during the Oka crisis? This is a huge part of his legacy that should not be forgotten. That he attacked a peaceful resistance, including children, that he was presiding over Canada when the military was given the order to go to be the ones to deal with the Ganasatake resistance.
Oh, yeah. That is such a huge part of his legacy. Obviously, so too is Meech Lake, the corruption as well. It's so funny to go back and look at some of this stuff. Like, he was handed money, probably, to influence Air Canada's decision to purchase Airbus planes over Boeing planes. And the Airbus scandal is something that was completely swept away in all of the eulogizing of Mr. Mulroney. Now, I'm going to read you something, Sandy. I want you to tell me which politician said this, okay? I am saddened to hear of the death of the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney. He made an important contribution to Canada, including protecting our environment, leading the world in tackling acid rain, and banning chemicals that were destroying the ozone layer. He was also a strong opponent of apartheid, leading the efforts to sanction South Africa by Commonwealth nations. My deep sympathy to his family.
Leading the efforts against apartheid?
Didn't you know that? Comrade Mulroney.
Okay. Well, I'm going to guess Jagmeet Singh because that would be the most surprising. But it sounds like it came from a Liberal Party fucking member, which I suppose the NDP is right now. So, ergo, was it Jagmeet?
True. It was Jagmeet. That's right. That is how the leader of the NDP memorialized the man that created GST, that defunded EI, that privatized 23 crown corporations, and that fought for free trade, which absolutely decimated our manufacturing industry and also integrated us with the United States to ensure that unemployment was high and that the exchange rate was not a trade barrier. This is my favorite part of the whole free trade discussion, which was that Canada's lower dollar posed a trade barrier because American companies could invest in Canada for a cheaper rate than American companies because our dollar was in the low 70s. And so part of priming Canada for free trade was actually fucking with interest rates such that our dollar's worth climbed, and it has stayed in the 80s basically since, at the expense of just decimating average Canadians with these interest rate hikes. And now interest rate hikes and monetary policy is the way that the Bank of Canada, which is unelected, manages our economy. It's so bad and enraging. And fuck that guy. And all you have to say is my sympathies to his family, but he was a fucking asshole.
Yep. Not much more to say after that. Yeah. A prime minister died. A former prime minister died. Nora, the Pharmacare plan was released.
Yes. Okay. Tell me about it.
It's a plan to make a plan. It's
I love
really
those
great.
kinds of plans.
It's like it's a plan in which a plan is going to be made, and it's going to cost something. You know. There's some reports of it's going to cost this much. There's some reports of it's going to cost that much. But all the reports say that the government refused to say exactly how much it's going to cost because they need to figure it out.
Kind of important.
Kind of important. As some of the reports reference someone who was like, please don't name me, saying that it's going to cost another amount. You know how much that amount is?
$3 billion. That's a guess.
So CBC reports that Mark Holland, when pressed, said that it could cost in the range of $1.5 billion. There's another CBC report where someone who's speaking on the promise of anonymity claims that it will be that the Liberals only have $800 million to spend. But suffice it to say, we don't know how much this is going to cost. So this plan is really in the beginning stages, despite all the time that has gone by since this promise was made. And also, they have committed to, yes, covering diabetes drugs and contraceptive drugs, but we don't even have a list as to which ones yet. So I can't tell you much about this plan besides it's gonna be a plan and things will be announced in the future. So that's what we got, Nora, a Pharmacare plan that's planning to plan.
Do or do not. There is no plan.
Yeah, I mean, this is really, really fucking outrageous and really frustrating because, of course, this long into it, especially with how long this fucking announcement took, like a two-week rollout, you'd think that there would be more information than this, but all we've got is some ha's, some maybes, and eventually. And it's real clear to me that this is an election strategy and not much else. We're being told to wait once again for the umpteenth time that this is coming after the election.
I mean, for Christ's sakes. This has all been very bad for the NDP, and I'll explain it a bunch of different ways. Now, first of all, that list of drugs is available for contraceptives. Do you know what's not on that list, Sandy?
No, I don't. But it's not the specific list of drugs, but it's like types of drugs are on it. Yeah. But what's not on it?
The abortion pills. The abortion pills are not on that list.
Oh my God. Wasn't that what this was all about? Like, wasn't that what they had said last week?
Well, they talk about Roe versus Wade because that's all about birth control. Didn't you know?
Oh my God. Oh my God, Nora, it's just so disappointing, the rhetoric.
So for the 7 million, oh my God, the way that they framed this was really strange. The 7 million Canadians of childbirthing age, which is, of course, I'm not sure if that's everybody who might be of childbirthing age or just like who they are thinking are biologically female of childbirthing age or people who have uterus of childbirthing age. It was very weird how it was phrased, but those drugs will be available to them and not the abortion pills, which is a real hole and real problem because they really should be for free. And diabetes medication, and that allowed Jagmeet Singh to make this announcement outside of the Best and Banting Institute at University of Toronto to talk about how Banting and Best, when they discovered insulin, they sold it for $1 because they didn't want to make any money off of it. So all very, very good PR. Now they announced it, and in the week of the announcement, following, because there was no details, it just handed the Conservatives a silver platter message box, which was the case of the Ontario Conservatives. They're like, well, we're not going to commit to anything. We don't see the details. It's like, obviously. So, okay, you got a bad news cycle there in Ontario. You had Alberta claiming that they weren't going to do it because they have a private opt-in insurance program, which is basically Pharmacare, which it's not. And but then Singh not being able to explain why Quebec could opt out and not Alberta, which created some really awkward talking point moments. Someone in the journalist corps was trying to ask Jagmeet, like, what is the difference between these two provinces? And rather than actually having really understood the difference in the Pharmacare program in Quebec and the private Blue Cross program in Alberta, Singh kind of stumbled over, we have the Sherbrooke Declaration, and the Sherbrooke Declaration is why we are having this position, as if anyone knows the fuck that is. So that was kind of bizarre, and that is like the NDP's way of trying to say that Quebec is its own nation and can do what it wants. But again, that's not a very powerful message when you can't explain that Quebec does have a bulk purchased drug program already. And then other provinces have versions of it too. So anyway, it was very, very poorly rolled out. All of this is to just set up both parties to try and say, get us elected and you'll get Pharmacare. And I think that is really what's happening most obviously. The problem, of course, is that the Liberals will be the ones that can claim the credit that they can actually do it. And all the NDP can say is that they played a minor role forcing the Liberals to do this while also giving them total power of a majority against the will of what Canadians voted.
Yeah, and I think we have to ask ourselves as we looked forward to that fucking election cycle for the gazillionth time we've been promised this, was it worth it? Was it worth it? Was this deal that the NDP crafted with the Liberals to come up with the Pharmacare plan, which ends up being a plan to have a plan, worth it? Giving up all of that power in order to get something that, come on, we have to be honest, isn't what we were promised. I think we can look back soberly and say that it wasn't.
Yep. I too grow weary, but there it is. Let's close the book on that one. But do you have a prediction for what it's going to look like in the budget? Because my guess is they're going to earmark in the tens of millions of dollars for the plan and then hundreds of millions of dollars for the drug coverage that they have announced. That's what I'm expecting to see, the full extent of Pharmacare in the budget. But on that, I could be wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong, but I bet it's not bigger than maximum 160 million.
Well, Nora, I mean, if the sneaky announcements are to be believed, it's going to be between 800 million and 1.5 billion. Again, nobody's said what this is going to cost, but in this particular budget, as it's going to be a plan to plan it out, I'd say you're probably right. It's going to be real low, low expenditure of cash. That's just going to say here we are. If you want this to continue, vote Liberal again in the next election. So yeah, I grow weary, as you said, and I'm really, really fucking frustrated and upset about how this is all shaken out. It's altogether way too predictable. We've been here before.
Woo! That was a good run, guys. NDP's closest access point to power, possibly ever, actually.
Yeah, good run or something.
Okay. Now, all of this stuff are kind of sideshows. You know, Mulroney's not coming back from the dead, and this Pharmacare program will likely be a zombie program planned for a long time. But one thing that is extremely concerning, Sandy, have you seen protest is apparently not allowed in Canada at all?
Oh my
anymore.
gosh. It has been unbelievable to watch over the last few months how much our what the rhetoric has shifted to in this country around our fucking freedom to protest, what is acceptable and what is like results in these ridiculous sort of pearl clutching moments. It's like, do we have the right to protest or not? Is this like a place where we're supposed to have these sorts of freedoms or not? It's really quite stunning. Like the idea that we can no longer protest on certain roads, certain highways, like that there's a right way to protest. It's all bullshit. And it's pretty concerning how this rhetoric is being used.
Yeah. So here in the past weekend, okay, and actually, I'll back up. I feel like activism around Palestine, but then also just general anti-war activism has really upped its game in the last month. In the last week, World Beyond War, with a lot of other organizations, staged blockades at arms manufacturing facilities all across Canada. And it was amazing. And, you know, the photos were wonderful to see. And then this past weekend, there was a dinner that was held at the Art Gallery of Ontario that was honoring Giorgia Meloni, who is the president or the prime minister, who fucking cares, the fascist leader of Italy. And like literal fascist, like, you know, she was hailed as the first fascist leader of Italy since Mussolini. Her party, the Brothers of Italy, or whatever the hell it's called, their roots are in the fascist party. She was a member of a fascist youth club, and she's never denounced that. She's been vehemently anti-immigration. I mean, this woman is a fascist. And protesters shut down the dinner that she was supposed to have with Justin Trudeau and a whole bunch of other cabinet ministers. An amazing show of solidarity. Congratulations to those folks. You fucking did it. You're doing it. And I mean, all of my hats go off to you all for this action.
Imagine being Italian and joining a fascist youth club.
Oh, I mean, have you met Italians, men?
You can imagine. You don't even have to imagine half of that. Like you, I mean, what?
I don't have to imagine that at all.
a fascist youth club?
Yeah.
What is? Oh my God. Oh, congratulations to the protesters. But gosh, there's been a lot of Canadian pearl clutching around that. Like, how dare the protesters stop the Italian the fascist? Well, they don't say fascist in the pearl clutching. Like a state event from ongoing. How dare? How dare? Yeah. How dare they?
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty wild. And so Marco Mendicino was pretty much making it sound like Italians are Jews in how he was responding to this.
What?
And it's like, okay, Italians and Jews are very similar people. Very similar mannerisms, very similar things that they do. Like, there's a reason why I, as an Italian, feel very comfortable when I'm in Jewish events and gatherings, because people are really similar to the people that I grew up with. But Sandy, is it anti-Semitic to shut down the event of a fascist Christian leader? Is that at all anti-Semitic?
I'm trying to do the math on that one because I don't want to be wrong. And I'm you know, it's hard for that to add up to anything but absolutely the fuck not. Like, how in the world do we get there? And in the same week that we're like, Mulroney, so great for like doing all that he could to stop apartheid, for leading the charge, like in the same week, from the same breaths in some ways, now saying it is anti-Semitic to protest a fascist Christian Italian person having whatever event at the AGO, I believe it was going to be at. Yeah, cool. My math says no. Am I right?
Okay.
Did I win?
I'm going to read you the comment from Michael Levitt, who's the head of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. The Simon Wiesenthal Center, is supposed to be fighting anti-Semitism in Canada. This is just kind of wild. Okay, so we have here in 1933, the Italians and Jews of Toronto stood shoulder to shoulder at Christie Pitts against thugs seeking to intimidate our communities. In 2024, we are again standing together in common cause, this time in the face of the thuggery and intimidation of the anti-Israel mob. We will not be silenced while our communities are attacked. Not then, not now, not ever.
What? Okay.
Okay, I got another one. Marco Mendicino, disgusting anti-Semitic protesters swarmed, threatened, and insulted members of the Italian-Canadian community at an official event last night at the AGO. How sure, there's Italian Jews, but you cannot be anti-Semitic against Italians in general. like
the Italian Canadian community, like all of the Italians in Canada, very much protested against by protesting because this person, all the Canadian Italians are what now, fascists too? Like, what is the math that's happening? What is the math that is happening to make this happen?
It's bizarre math. I got one more here for you with Deborah Lyons, who's Canada's official anti-Semitic guru, a woman fighting against anti-Semitism and fighting for Holocaust remembrance, okay? She writes this: last night's shameful forced cancellation of a bilateral meeting due to a violent protest is the direct result of caving in to the irrational demands of an out-of-control and noisy cohort, fueling their determination. It will take courageous leadership, which may not be easy but is truly necessary to stop the anti-Semitism, violence, and harassment that has become an everyday occurrence to keep our streets, schools, and country safe. I implore those in positions of leadership, do not wait until it's too late.
Sorry, violent? Didn't people just stand at the entrance?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's violence, Sandy.
Listen, honestly, like the Trudeau government is probably thankful that this happened. Honestly, they probably know that, like, they don't want to have photos of these people shaking hands. Like in some ways they're probably grateful, but it's just like so fucking gross, so fucking strange, like all of the propagandizing and strange ways that these things are being talked about. And then all of that is just justification for what happens afterwards, which is the police saying that they're going to have to really study this one. They're going to be investigating. They're going to be going after people, which is meant to put a chill on the sort of organizing that has been happening, that has forced the government to shift their positions and has finally forced the NDP to put forward a motion in Parliament, which is not all they could do, let's remember, but they've put forward a motion. They could put forward bills. They could, end agreements that they have and so on. But they finally put forward a comprehensive motion, and all of this sort of pearl clutching and like imagining that there's some sort of other respectful way to be that is also obviously going to be criticized, as it all has, in the face of a genocide, or in the face of fascist leaders, in the face of all of this, like, fuck off. Like, you folks are making a new normal when it comes to what we are able to do, how we are able to voice our frustration and opposition to what our governments are doing. Sorry, if this is supposed to be a free country, are we not? Isn't this supposed to be one of the very things that we're free to do? Stand in front of a door? Like, this is, come on now.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is it, right? Like, the government is seeing increased protest and increased dissent as being a huge threat to it. And I think that this is such a wonderful example because, at the heart of it, Mulroney meeting with Trudeau doesn't have a whole lot to do with Palestine. It does in that both countries are complicit in what's happening and have been supporters of Israel. But the fact that Mulroney is a fucking fascist is what's really important here. And of course, it would be people mobilized around Palestine who would be the most ready and able and active to be doing these kinds of actions. And so for politicians to turn this into being about anti-Semitism and being anti-Semitic to block non-Jewish politicians from meeting a fucking Christian fascist, I mean, that actually that's going to fuel anti-Semitism way more than anything else, because then it does look like a conspiracy. Then that's like that's Zionists using Judaism to justify shutting down criticism of Zionism. I mean, it's so obvious. It's so obvious, and it could not have been made more obvious the day after at another protest. Sandy, did you see what happened at this event that was encouraging people to invest in real estate in Israel and also the West Bank in Thornhill?
No, I did not. I don't know. You mentioned this briefly before we started recording, and I did not see this news. So please tell me what happened.
So last week, there were images that circulated of a bunch of different meetings that were organized by real estate companies, specifically Keller Williams, to get Canadians interested in purchasing real estate in Israel. Now, I mean, from the perspective of boycott, divestment, sanctions, and what the Israeli state is doing right now, that alone is enough worth protesting it. But they also were not just trying to sell property within like the green line and the green zone to be able to where like Israel exists, but they're also encouraging people to purchase land in the West Bank, which is fucking illegal and like against Canada's policy on the West Bank. So this protest happens. It happens with a combination of groups who have been, very vocal around Palestine, including Jewish groups. And when folks showed up, there was a guy with.
Sorry, and I just want to put a finer point on this before you continue. This is a protest supporting the government position, correct?
Yes.
Okay, continue. Go on.
Okay. A guy shows up brandishing a nail gun, like one of the things that you would shoot massive nails into the wall when you're doing drywalling. And he's like brandishing it. There's videos of him getting in people's faces with it. He's pulling it back, like, which is what you have to do when you're pressing it against drywall to actually shoot a nail out of it. And the whole thing is caught on camera. Now, Samira Moyadeen, who's a journalist, she posted just a couple of hours ago, again, we're recording on Monday, she posted this, quote, "It's now been more than 12 hours since this guy shot a nail gun at protesters while shouting, quote, 'Every fucking Palestinian will die,' unquote, and not a single Canadian official has said a word. Apparently, a guy in a Spider-Man suit climbing buildings and waving a flag is more of a threat to Canada."
Oh my God. What?
Yup. And worse than that, there are politicians.
Wow.
There are politicians that are making this incident about anti-Semitic protests outside of a synagogue. And not that a synagogue is being used to promote violating international law.
Oh my God. The ways that like social relations that stand to be remapped out of the way that people are responding to the responses to this genocide are really, really dangerous. It's like really dangerous. And I do not understand how politicians like, I've been watching Olivia Chow, Justin Trudeau, like the NDP, everyone fall over themselves to be like, and we're going to just make sure that the police are double checking everything that anybody who takes to the streets to support Palestine are doing. And then someone is like attacking people with a nail gun, like something that can do serious damage, something that can kill you, like literally screaming about killing all Palestinian people and not a peep from anyone. What the fuck is going on?
It is the reconstruction of what is permissible and what is not permissible in Canada. And it has been happening from the start, right? It's been happening ever since people's houses were raided at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning to get them arrested for having thrown paint on an Indigo. It has been happening since all of the attention on that individual climbing on top of Mount Sinai's marquee as if that was an anti-Semitic act. And it is trying to do everything possible to reformulate fighting like anti-fascism as being actually fascism. And, we've seen this from the far right for a long time. We have not seen it in such an acute way from people who hold power. And I think that is where this is just so unbelievably dangerous. To reformulate anti-Semitism as being canceling a meeting with the fucking fascist prime minister of Italy, or as being a legitimate protest against people who are actively trying to violate international law at a time where there is a potentially ongoing genocide as determined by the International Court of Justice. Like those are righteous positions. Those are just positions. Those are on the plane of what is right and wrong. Those are the correct positions to be taken. And they are in direct opposition with our foreign policy. They are in direct opposition with what media is telling us is good and not good. And they are in direct opposition with what the business world is saying is good and not good. And it's so easy to get completely warped around and turned upside down within this logic. And it is so wonderful to see the activists who are there, who are confronting the stuff head on, understanding clear as day that they are on the right side of this.
Man, Nora, do you remember like when this started, like we spoke briefly about who really benefits from this sort of repurposing of what it all means, and we talked about how one of those beneficiaries were like the Nazi far right KKK types who are the actual anti-Semitics who have been organizing as like remember before the war how that was something that we were talking about all the time. Yeah. I don't know if you saw this, but just a couple weeks ago in Nashville, there was like a Nazi rally, like a full-on Nazi rally that went through Nashville. Like that organizing is continuing to happen, and that anti-Semitism is pointed. It's real. It's direct, and it will have an impact. And people aren't paying attention to that right now as a expression of anti-Semitism in the way that they are paying attention to just like literal peaceful protest and arguing about whether or not that is anti-Semitism. And I like what the consequence of that as well, man, like it just seems like, there's like a real like concerted effort or maybe a willful non-effort to understand the moment that we are actually in to benefit what? Like to benefit the geopolitical positions that are in place right now that benefit genocide so that we can continue to be a friend to Israel. Like, I just don't understand. Like, it doesn't... The consequences of this can be really, really significant and dangerous. And that seems more anti-Semitic to me to not be paying attention to that, than certainly than protesting in support of the government's fucking position, on the streets of Toronto.
Yeah, how dare Torontonians or Thornhillians or Vaughanians, whoever was at that protest, try to defend Canada's international position on the settlements in the West Bank. This is exactly where you see the confluence of liberalism and fascism. And I think that is the most important thing to take away from this, which is that, going after the far right for doing all of the anti-Semitic things that we have seen done it has been mostly a way to distract from where the real hatred lies and from the people who are not just doing the real hatred, but the violent acts of hatred. It is not the far left. And I don't know, Sandy, if you saw this last week as well. Someone was arrested for an anti-Semitic act where he vandalized a statue and many other things. They didn't say what the other things were, what the message was on the other things. None of those were hate crimes, but he wrote the same thing on a statue, and he wrote "Vote for Hamas" on this statue. Do you know who the statue it is of?
No, what is it?
Well, this happened in Toronto, and the statue was of Al Waxman.
I don't know who that is, I don't think. Who's Al Waxman?
Of course you don't know who that is. You're not 70. So, it's just another example of how this was whipped up by Joe Warmington at this Toronto Sun as another act of vile anti-Semitism. Now, Al Waxman was an actor, and he was famously the King of Kensington. Does that say anything to you?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Are you from Toronto? Kensington? Do you know about Kensington Market? You know where that is, right? It's like,
yeah,
people were acting.
Yeah. What is King of Kensington? Was that like a television
people were acting
show?
As if it was like 1988. Everyone still remembers the King of Kensington. And so this guy spray paints a whole bunch of installations of the city of Toronto, says the press release from the cops, and also a statue of Al Waxman, who was Jewish and the King of Kensington. And this is the vile anti-Semitism. So, once again, and also who the fuck is spray painting "Vote for Hamas"?
A sitcom that was on TV from 1975 to 1980. My Canada lore is not that strong.
This is ridiculous. Meanwhile, the far right is organizing, and they have fight clubs, and they are training, and they are sharing information. And don't worry, because the Online Harms Act will allow a life in prison sentence for advocating genocide, which is interesting because what is encouraging people to settle the West Bank who are not Palestinians, if not actively encouraging a genocide? I wonder if those folks will be now nailed under the new act. I doubt it.
It's almost like we didn't already have laws against hate speech that could have been activated in that sort of circumstance. Nope. We're just going to continue to pass laws that are the same as the old laws that they're not going to enforce in any measurable way. That's has been a consistent part of this particular Liberal government's response to shit. And so not surprised to have seen that in the Online Harms Act. But fuck. Oh, my God. Good point on what else could be more hateful.
Mm-hmm. So what do we do, Sandy? How do we continue to resist this?
We keep on. Sorry, but all of this bullshit around there being a right way to protest or about what is actually protest and what's violent and not being able to really have a grounded reality and all of that says to me one thing, fuck it. Keep doing what we're doing because it's being effective in some ways. It is forcing politicians to move. As I mentioned earlier, the NDP has finally, has submitted a motion in the House that in part is calling for the House to officially recognize the state of Palestine. That is calling for the reinstating the funding for UNRWA that was, that devastating, almost billions in removal of funding from all over the world for Canada to reinstate its funding. That stuff doesn't happen without all of the support that's been going on the ground, and we can force more to happen. And some of this response is just because people are frustrated at this sort of support, the success that people are having. And so, we keep on. But I think that there needs to be, some attention that is focused on just how much our civil liberties are being decimated in this time period. There has to be outcry against it, and we have to organize against it, because if they know they can just do this and there isn't enough pushback, they will continue to do more. There will be a continued encroachment on our rights. And so where is the Canadian Civil Liberties Association? I don't know. I haven't looked to see if they've done anything. But fuck, we also have to fucking just protest the way that the government is, governments, police, and just like how fucking media is talking about some of these protests, because it really, really is shocking.
If they're talking about them at all.
If they're talking about them at all.